All right, good morning, everyone. How are you? Good, thanks. This week will probably be a little bit longer than last week, but hopefully not too bad. Some quick announcements. I know it's short notice. You would have seen something come from Alex this morning and last Thursday. So this Thursday, Treadstone Law, Harris from Treadstone Law is going to come in to talk about mastering mistakes to propel your career. If Treadstone sounds familiar, they came and presented last year on AI. I don't know if anybody remembers that. So they're a law firm, but they invest heavily in the tech space. But they're going to come in to talk about some of the mistakes that they see in deals and how to overcome those and master it. If you haven't registered already, please feel free to scan the QR code. It will take you to the registration form. Good. Realtor Quest, I've mentioned this. This will be the last week that I mention this. That's not true. I'll mention it one more time next week. If you're a member of Treb, your admission is included with your membership. If you're not a member of Treb, which basically you all are, except for the ones that aren't registered yet, I believe it's $400 or $500 to go. They do it every year, except for COVID. So this is the second year it's been back. Last year was pretty amazing. It was way bigger than I expected, but feel free to join us there. This is going to be the last reminder. There will be your dashboards should be set up for the agent referral form. So this is something, once again, front desk will take care of everything. If you choose to take part in this, anytime you do a transaction, the front desk will send something for a testimonial. And when you get a testimonial back, it will be in your dashboard. You can share it automatically with Google and automatically to the bio on your Meadowtowne page. So it's a really good way because everybody that you meet will Google you and find out if there's testimonials, there's more of a chance that you'll get more referrals that way. If you don't like the referral, or the testimonial, then you just don't publish it. So you don't have to fight with online trolls or anything. Okay, Meadowtowne Golf Tournament, I've mentioned it a couple times, will be taking place on June 24th. And that will be at the golf club in Georgetown. It's $150, includes cart and HST. Proceeds from this tournament will be going towards the new hospice care facility that's being built in Halton Hills. I'd mentioned it before, but Meadowtowne was a big part in acquiring the property for that hospice. It'll have 10 beds, and after that one's built, they are going to look to start another one in Milton. So it's a really good cause. Okay, top producers. This is the one you've been waiting for, I guess, right? Top individuals for April 2024. Number 10, Kirk Jackson, who isn't here, but give him a big round of applause when he comes in. Brad, number 9. Congratulations. Number 8, Debbie Brown, who I thought I saw earlier, but not here. Yeah. Number 7, the ever elusive Miro. I don't think he's ever attended one of these meetings. Number 6, Mr. George Repis. A little bit of a slow start to the year, but he's really picking up some steam. Number 5, welcome back to the show, Lynn Owen, who has been here the last couple weeks. I don't know where she is this week. Oh, she's golfing probably. Scott, number 4, who just exited, so you can give him a big hand when he comes back in, and he won't know what it's for. Number 3, Alexander Gesson. Number 2, Mr. George Webster. You'll see him a lot more now that for those of you that don't know him, George only sells islands. So his year is effectively like April to October. So get used to seeing his face now. And Tobin, number 1. Hey, welcome, Charles. Top 5 teams for April. Number 5, Brandon Mahami team. Congratulations, Fran. Number 4, the Borg team. Justin is normally here, but he's in Newfoundland right now. Number 3, the Vivas Group Realtors. I saw Milagros earlier, so she'll wander in. Again, give her a round of applause. She won't know what it's for. Number 2, the Rob Kelly Group. And number 1, the Pinder Singh team. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Back on. Top individuals for awards year to date. Number 10, Mr. Scott Brubaker. That's a close-up, eh? Sorry, I didn't realize I did that. Number 9, is Mr. Sadwali. He could put this on the mantle beside his Daytime Emmy Award. Number 8, Miro. Number 7, Brad, cracking in the top 10. Number 6, Mike Weems. Number 5, Arnold Danowski. I don't know where he is this week, but he'd be happy to crack the top 5 now. Number 4, Charles. I think that's the same shirt. Is that the same? No. Yeah, like I took it today. Number 3, Tobin Lifchus. I don't know what's with all these close-ups all of a sudden. Number 2, George Webster, and number 1, Alexander Gesson. Top 5 teams awards year to date. Number 5, the Rob Kelly Group. Number 4, Team Brianna Hammy. Let her know again. Number 3, Pinder Singh Team. Number 2, Vivas Group Realtors. And number 1, no surprise, the board team. And so those will, you'll be getting your tiles later this week. I think Andrea and marketing are working on it now. Okay, some stats. Showings. Showings look good over the last week. Instead of a 3% decrease in showing activity in our markets, there was a 5% increase. Days on market also went up a little bit. However, there was a lot more new listings coming to the market. I don't know. It's a little bit unusual compared to the year before to see a 10% increase in listings. My guess is part of it has something to do with the capital gains tax increase, but I'm not 100% sure. In Mississauga, we had a 6% increase in showing activity, 14% increase in new listings coming to the market. So there was a lot more new listings again. Days on market, relatively unchanged, only changed by about half a day over the last week. Even though there was that 6% increase in showings and the 14% increase in inventory, sales in Mississauga were not great over the last week. So Milton went up from 29 to 32 units. Halton Hills changed from 13 units to 11, and Mississauga actually had a steep drop, which we'll see in the next slide. However, the sale to ask ratio is, good morning, Ursula, is relatively unchanged. It's within a few percentage points. In Mississauga, went from 68 freehold unit sales to 51 in the next week. Condos went down, not quite as much, but from 42 to 31. So we were down, I believe it was about 28 units overall. So it was a pretty sharp drop in sales in Mississauga. In Niagara, for some reason, Broker Bay, they didn't even realize this, but all the Niagara stats were dropped from Broker Bay last week. They're working on it, but I don't have an update on the Niagara stats for this week. I apologize. I'll see if I can give you 2 updates next week. So they were working on fixing it on Friday, but when we were pulling the stats together, it wasn't fixed by that point. Months of inventory. So even though we've seen that large increase in listings over the last week, not a huge effect on months of inventory. So that it didn't have an overall or an immediate change in what we're seeing in the market in most areas. So for the condo market across Toronto, everything stayed almost the same within 0.1 or 0.2. The Toronto Centre and Toronto West actually had a small decline in months of inventory, so it tightened up a bit. Brampton had a 0.4 month decrease. Mississauga with that increase in sales or increase in listings and decrease in sales, it ticked up a couple decimal points for inventory for condos. Halton region still very tight. Burlington and Milton are still sitting at under 2 months, so it's a very, very low inventory. Oakville crept up a bit. So Oakville has really been the most volatile of for condos in the Halton region, but it's still sitting under 4 months of inventory. I think by the technical definition, it's still a seller's market there, but I would argue psychologically, Oakville's probably a bit more of a balanced market when it comes to the condo market. And Niagara had a pretty steep drop in condos. Hamilton had a 0.3 increase. Looking at the freehold market, not much change at all. The center of Toronto stayed relatively stable. Toronto East, which has been the tightest market for Toronto all year, only ticked up by 0.1, and Toronto West also by 0.1. But Toronto East and Toronto West still very tight for inventory in the freehold market. In the Peel region, Brampton and Mississauga both ticked up by 0.1 months of inventory, but still well under that 3 months of inventory mark. Halton, Burlington remains extremely tight for freehold inventory. Milton crept up quite a bit, even though they had that increase in number of sales. They had a larger increase in listings last week, and Oakville crept down by almost well, by half the amount. Halton Hills, after 2 weeks ago, they had that massive week of sales last week. And 2 weeks ago, or sorry, the last 2 weeks were relatively stable. But again, they had that influx of inventory again, so they crept up. They're still under 3 months of inventory though, so still seller's market. And Hamilton and Niagara, not a lot of change. Niagara by 0.2, they're still sitting under 4 months of inventory. Hamilton's still under 2.5. So months of inventory, even though we saw that week where there was a lot more listings coming out, not a huge change in the amount of inventory available in the market, at least not immediately. We'll see what the next few weeks bring. So we're coming into the second week of May, so we probably got a good 6-7 weeks before you'll start to see that inventory change and the sales start to slow. Okay, that's it for stats. Anybody else seeing anything before we chit the chat? No, quiet. All right. So a couple of things that happened last week. One, I'm going to give you a lease scenario. So one of our agents, I'm going to call them Binder Zing, so for the sake of anonymity, had a lease closed last week. So here's the details. You'll never figure out who it is, don't worry. Okay, so Binder was on the listing side of the lease. They received an offer, they vetted them, did the background check, credit reports, IDs, pay stubs, employment letters, everything checked out. So they were dealing with a lady. The lady was working here, and she was going to be bringing in her family, husband and kids from Nigeria. They were going to be moving in with her. And the offer was accepted, first and last month received, everything was fine. Okay, so closing date arrives, tenant take the keys, they take possessions, they say they're going to move in about a week. Not uncommon. Again, everything's fine. After the tenants move in, the landlords are living upstairs, tenants are moving into the basement. During the negotiations, everything was good. They met the lady, they had conversations, they had a personal relationship. They're going to be living under the same roof. All of a sudden, the lady starts running into the house every time they see her. They're not talking. They're avoiding eye contact. And the landlords actually get a good look and realize that the lady that moved in is not the lady that signed the lease. So the husband and kids were the same, but it turns out what happened was the lady rented it under her name, but it was for her sister. And the husband was really her brother-in-law. It was the husband of her sister who was coming in. So they realized that the person who moved in was not the person that signed the lease, but the husband and kids were listed as occupants on the rental application. Everybody got the scenario so far? All right. So what legal advice would you give your landlord in this case? Let's pretend that it is your client, it's your landlord client. I'm not going to give you the answer. You guys have to answer. You have no choice but to talk now. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, that's one. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. So I'm glad none of you actually gave legal advice and you're referring them. So in terms of what you think can be done, you can file with the landlord tenant board. Any other suggestions? Change, yeah, speak to Dion, which is what Binder did. Any other suggestions? Let's open talk this. Let's pretend we're... Yeah. So you would still want them to stay in the house? You just want the correct information? Yeah. Yeah. Well, they have ID. They're real people, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I have more information.
Sure.
I wanted to explain why this was done below the table.
Yeah.
That her and decide from there.
Okay. Yeah. So there won't be a credit report because they're actually all coming in from Nigeria, so there's no credit history. So there's no credit report. Okay, well let's go to the third question there. Are they still tenants, even though they were not, or it should be named, not names, even though they were not named on the lease? You think they're tenants?
Yeah, you're right. They're occupants, not actual tenants.
Is an occupant not a tenant? Yeah. So what if you and I lease a place together and then but the lease is under my name and I die or I move out and you stay in the place, are you not a tenant? No, your name is not on the lease. You and I live together. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So if you and I live together, but the lease is in my name, and you and I have a big fight, we break up, I move out, you stay, you're still paying the rent, but you were never on the lease, are you not considered a tenant? So can they just change the locks on you?
No, she's still protected. You're still the one that's on the hook for the rent if she
Yeah.
stops paying. That's because they're not on the lease.
But what if you're still paying?
Then
Huh?
yeah.
Pay, then you can put it out, but if you pay, then that's like that is.
Yeah, the landlord and yeah, so essentially if somebody's living in there and they're paying, but they like if you've been there with me for a year and I just happen to leave, I'm still liable, I'm still on the hook to pay, but if you're still paying and you've been there for a year, you still have tenant rights. Yeah. I don't like it either. But yeah. Okay. So think carefully before we lock in your answers. The keys were voluntarily given, and the husband and children were listed as occupants on the rental application. Hmm? I don't know. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah. Nobody living in there signed the original document. This is good. Yeah. 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 We'll have to wait to find out.
She's on the hook for fraud.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're in, they've been given the keys, they paid first and last.
They were given the keys voluntarily because there was an understanding that they were the
Yeah.
legitimate.
Yeah.
But
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They were definitely deceived. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I like your point. I'm just trying to trick you up a bit. Okay. So Binder, well, let's drop the charade. It was Pinder. So Pinder called Dion. The advice Dion gave was no, they are not considered tenants at this point. So it was deception, but you cannot just change the locks. So the two options where you can apply to the landlord tenant board for eviction, which is still going to take a year, or well, months to a year. You can also call the police. Technically, they're trespassing at this point. However, the likelihood of the police actually doing anything and dragging them out is, well, Dion said 50-50. I think it's probably lower than that. So the advice was either try and work it out with them, or apply for eviction. The third choice would have been to call the police and for trespassing. But again, it's unlikely that they would enforce it. Right. Yeah. So I think what they settled on was, well, it's not settled yet, but what they settled on was they are going to try and get everybody in a room together, including the lady that signed the lease. And they're going to try and amend the lease to include everyone else. They will not let the original person off because she's the only one with income right now. But they're going to try and add I guess the sister and her husband on as well, even though they're not employed yet. So that's where they settled it. Yeah. So I didn't have that information when I put this together. I assume they're still living in whatever home they also own and rent. But like if everybody who's looking to rent, they have a place to live, whether it's with family or a place they're moving from or that they sold, but they all have a current place of residence. So perhaps she said that she was moving or sold or. Yeah. 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 To be honest, I don't know how you could have avoided this. I mean, you can have a clause in your Schedule A stating that the person on the lease will be living in the premises, but I'm not. You're still not going to be able to avoid the landlord-tenant board. Just you were one of two people to tell me that last week. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Were the contents of the documents the same? Like the job letters, did it show the same? Yeah,
The same employer, same wording.
same income. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even credit reports. Yeah. So one of the things that I used to do when I was representing landlords is I would always ask for any rental applications to be submitted with credit reports. Once we settled on who we were planning to move forward with, I would do our own credit check on our side. So I never, ever accepted credit reports from that I was receiving. So a lot of people, they'll say, well, I don't like it because it's going to be like, it's going to show as a check, it'll lower their score. I don't care. I'm not here to protect you. So like there's a cost to it that either I would absorb or my landlord clients would absorb, but we did our own credit check on every application we were going to move forward with. Yeah. To be honest, that's not up to them. Once they sign the rental application, part of that application is consenting to a credit check. So you can let them know, and if they don't want it, then you can you can say this is this is the deal breaker, you're sure, but it's not up to them whether or not that credit check is done. They've consented by signing that rental app. Yeah. Yeah, I've received fake credit reports, fake job letters. So when I do the background check, any job letter that I get, you want to verify any information on the job letter. So the address of the company, the phone number of the company. If those don't match, it's automatic disqualification. But I also look up like the name of the HR person that signed it. I'll look up that person's LinkedIn and social media, see if they actually work for that company. I go deep. Yeah. Yeah. Donna, I think you had one last year where it was like a moving company or a logistics company and when we were looking into it, it had this beautiful website, real company. I can't remember if it was registered or not. It looked super authentic, but every link on the website was a broken link. It was just like a homepage and about, and it didn't take very long to figure out it wasn't a real company, but yeah. All right. Estate sales. So I'm not going to get really deep into estate sales because there's a lot of variables, but I'm going to get into a specific scenario because we seem to be getting quite a few estate sales recently. I don't know, maybe we're just coming of age and we all know people that are dying. I don't know, but okay. So let's say that John Smith has 3 children, Ron, Jason, and Helen. Okay. John Smith has passed away. Ron is the executor. Jason and Helen are beneficiaries. Okay. So the estate is going to be split equally between the 3 children, Ron, Jason, and Helen, and John is dead. Who is your client? So the choice is the estate of John Smith, Ron Smith, the estate of John Smith and Ron Smith, who's the executor, the estate of John Smith, Ron Smith, Jason Smith, and Helen Smith, or just the 3 beneficiaries. So who says it's the estate of John Smith? All right. Who thinks it's the executor, Ron Smith? You're changing your answer? First one. Does anybody have a different answer than the estate of John Smith? I'm not going to go through them all. You do? Yeah. Okay. You like that one too? Okay. Well, then let's do this again. So we're down to 2. Hands up if you think it's the estate of John Smith. No, I'm asking who is the client? We'll get to that after. I just want to know who the best answer. Does anybody still go with the estate of John Smith and Ron Smith executor? Yeah. Okay. So the correct answer, your client is the estate of John Smith. That is your client. Ron Smith is the person that you will be communicating directly with, right? And then the other 2 are just beneficiaries. Okay. So, oh, I already answered that. You said it out loud. Okay. So Ron Smith is the person you're communicating directly with, but the only client is the actual estate. So who signs the paperwork for the listings and the sale? And then we'll get to after. What's that? Oh. I forgot. I forgot about my third choice. Okay. So if Ron Smith is the executor, then only Ron Smith is going to sign, right? Occasionally, you will have 2 executors, and how they sign will be laid out in the will. So sometimes they both have to sign, sometimes one will have signing authority. But in this case, Ron, as the only executor, is going to be the one signing it. And how should his signature be made out? So he can sign the estate of John Smith, Ron Smith acting as power of attorney, Ron Smith acting as executor, or just Ron Smith. You're saying power of attorney? The third one, acting as executor. Okay, so who agrees with Debbie that it's Ron Smith acting as executor? Yep. And who says just Ron Smith? Okay, sort of. So you can do either. Either is correct. So Ron Smith can just sign Ron Smith, right? But it won't say Ron Smith on the listing, to answer Brad's question. So the listing, the name on the listing is still going to be the estate of John Smith. Ron Smith will just sign his name. If they want to add in acting as executor, you can, but it's not necessary.
Executive in brackets under-
That's what I'm saying. You can. Yeah, you don't have to. You can just have the signature.
Between the seller and the person signing as the seller.
Yeah, so you'll want to do your due diligence to make sure that that person is actually acting as executor. But as soon as a listing and agreement of purchase and sale says estate of, you know it's some, you know there's an executor that's selling it. So if you want to say Ron Smith acting as executor, or Ron Smith brackets executor, or Ron Smith with nothing else, they're all fine. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you'll want some sort of documentation that you can, otherwise you might be complicit in title fraud or something. So yeah, so you want like a copy of the will or something from the lawyer that's assigning, you know, who the executors. Okay, yeah. No, no. As long as you have everything, then you can do that. Charles, you had a.
I-
Yeah, yeah. A little, maybe a little weekend at Bernie's scenario. Is everybody here too young for weekend at Bernie's?
The executive, the executive. That's-
So we actually did have a scenario like that last year. So that's a different scenario. But last year, Sandra Diab had a listing on Kenneth near Square One. And the gentleman who was selling it was still alive, but he had power of attorney, right? So somebody was acting as power of attorney. I think we talked about this in one of the meetings, actually. So they sold the unit, and then a week or two before closing, the gentleman died, right? So power of attorney dies with the person, right? So now the power of attorney did not have authority to sign anything for completion of the sale, and there was no will. So it had to go through probate, and it delayed the closing. It was a nightmare, but yeah, so different scenario though. We could talk about it later again. Okay. So who should you be communicating with? Yeah. Rasmus. So can you communicate with Jason and Helen? No?
No, that's not that, no.
Yeah. All right. I thought this was going to be a bit trickier for some of you. Okay. So yeah. So your direct communication is with Ron Smith as the executive of the state. If Ron decides to bring Jason and Helen into the conversation or meetings, just like somebody that brings their dad to the home inspection or dad to the offer, he's free to do that. But if you communicate with Jason or Helen without Ron present, you're now creating a separate agency relationship with them. And even though they haven't signed anything, you're creating an agency relationship, and you actually don't have consent. So if siblings are getting along or beneficiaries are getting along, this is really easy. You just say, I'm sorry, I can't communicate with this with you. I'm only allowed to communicate with the executor of the estate. Talk to Ron and see if, you know, he will consent to me communicating with you or bring you in on the meetings. If they're not getting along, you're in for a fight, because then they're going to start arguing about how they have a share, they should have equal say. But the short answer is you cannot communicate with the other beneficiaries without consent of the estate. you would want everything in writing, but really the easy answer is I'm only going to communicate with the executor. If he or she wants to bring you in or involve you, that's fine. I don't mind doing that, but they will need to be present. That's the way you should leave it. Okay, last question. Do you need to use the same FINTRAC forms for Jason and Helen that you use for Ron Smith, or would they be filled out as third parties? Like, you gotta speak louder. Oh, I couldn't trick you. Yeah, you don't do FINTRAC for beneficiaries. So I don't even think you'd have to FINTRAC that, yeah. So you do have to FINTRAC Ron, but you don't FINTRAC the other beneficiaries. Right? It's actually pretty simple, isn't it? Yeah. It didn't seem simple last week when we were going through it, but so I thought it would be good. But yeah, estate sales are not that difficult. The one difficulty would be the estate sale that's going through probate. Because you can list it and you can sell it, but you're not going to know what the completion date is. So if you're dealing with something in probate, I once dealt with a probate sale in Toronto that took 14 months. So you're going to want to include a condition saying that the closing may be delayed due to probate, and then the buyers would have to accept that condition. All right. It's different in every area. So Brampton lately has been fairly quick. So some places might be 3 to 6 months. Other places might be 8 to 10 months. If you go to Sault Ste. Marie, it might be 3 weeks. So well, you can write a condition any way you want. So some buyers might only agree that it can be delayed for up to 6 months. And after 6 months, then they would have to agree, or it depends on how you write it. So traditionally, they know they want the property. They understand probate can take a while, and yeah, it'll take as long as it takes. Other people will put in an expiry that you'd have to kind of renegotiate or extend it at the buyer's consent. Yeah, I don't know, depending on the market, if it was, a really, really slow buyer's market, I would probably accept something that could be renegotiated or voided. But in the market we've been in for as long as I've been in real estate, I don't think I would accept it that way. But it's always going to be case by case. Is the property easily sellable? Has the market gone up or is it trending up and you're going to bet on them staying and renegotiating? And if not, you're fine. You'll take it. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Yeah. Yeah, Donna she had an estate sale last year, then the executor was using a terrible, terrible lawyer. Yeah. Yeah. And that lawyer ended up costing that estate, was it thousands, tens of thousands? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a spouse. Yeah.
Communicate or lease selling, we've got EOAs, power attorneys, is that all the client, or is it the same scenario?
Yeah. So if somebody has, you're not allowed to deal with people that aren't of sound mind, right? So if the owner has dementia, they can't consent to any of that. So they would have to have some sort of power of attorney. Yeah. that good? Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, look.
Donna should be your managing broker. Yeah. Yeah.
I had clients where I couldn't talk to them after such and such a time of day.
Yeah.
Because they knew that they would have been drinking too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point. If somebody like if somebody is drunk or whatever, you get an offer, you can't deal with that offer. Yeah. 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 I I once had I was representing the buyer, and this was back in 2011. It was multiple offers in the Oak Park area, River Oaks area, with those stacked townhouses on Glen Ashton. And the listing agent was drunk. Yeah.
The book representation.
Yeah. It was horrible to watch. Hmm? No, no, but we ended up getting the sale. But I remember thinking to myself, like we won. There was four offers. Actually, Mark Batista was one of the other offers too. We were competing against him. But um, I was like, I left there. I was like, those poor client, like those sellers, they have no idea what was going on in that room. Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, it didn't really like at the beginning in the negotiation or the offer presentation, it wasn't bad. She had like a glass of wine with her, but oh yeah, yeah. But by the time like I think even by the time it was executed, it wasn't that bad. But then she started really celebrating after, and she was really talking about how much money she was making. It was kind of disgusting. The listing agent was drinking, not the sellers. No, the sellers were fine, but yeah. No, only alcohol now. Yeah, what is it? So have they said that they're not giving her that spot anymore? They're yeah, yeah, yeah. She won't. She won't have any say. So she, yeah. So they'll. So unless you break her leg, then she's probably going to get Yeah, then she's probably going to get a reassigned spot. Those builder agreements are never written in favor of the buyer. So the builder will be able to do anything really they want up until closing. Any other questions? All right, well then, Raymond's up. Do you need the computer, Raymond?